I'm Logan. I'm an alcoholic. It is very cool to be here tonight. I wasn't sure what to expect. I've spoken on a few different Caron things and I've seen, 15 people. I've spoken at certain things where there's a lot of people, but seeing 204 people in here is just amazing. And I know there's some people that are in recovery, some family members of people in recovery. I know it from both ends. I've had family members, try and get sober, family members that have gotten sober, and some that haven't. And so, if you're here for whatever reason, welcome. I'm super happy to be here, Christine. Thank you so much for introducing me and congratulations. And yeah, it's just an honor to be here and be asked to do anything for Caron. I'll start with reading step one. And so step one reads, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. And then it goes on in the extended version. It just says, who cares to admit complete defeat? Admission of powerlessness is the first step in liberation. Relation of relation of humility to sobriety. Mental obsession plus physical allergy. Why must every AA hit bottom? So uh yeah, I really appreciate the introduction, Christine. I definitely still am a young man. I make a lot of mistakes. I've stumbled through. My sobriety date is June 16th of 2019. That's when I came to Caron. My plan was not to stay sober. My plan was to figure it out, was to find out how to drink without the consequences I was facing, find out how to get everyone off my back, find out more about myself so that I could, manage my drinking. I didn't have any idea of what the first step was or what I was suffering from. I had a lot of denial. I was 19 years old, so I felt justified in that denial. I saw the steps on the wall. They didn't make any logical sense to me. Um, but what I found over the time and as I've kind of cleared up is something happened where the right amount of pain and the opportunity to get some help happened at the perfect time for me. And I think if maybe I'd gone to Karen a week earlier, I wouldn't have been ready. If I had missed that window a little later, I may not have stayed. So I believe that there was something looking out over me that brought me to the point where I was in Warnersville, Pennsylvania, listening to speakers speak and not wanting to hear a word of what they said. Like that's what I brought to AA. That's what I brought to Karen. That's the attitude I came in with. And so I just to like briefly just touch on broadly kind of what happened with step one, and I'll tell a little bit of my story and then some of my experience with that step is if you're new, if you're in some denial, if you're not totally sure if can never drink again safely, that's how I felt as well coming in. I don't know if, people say like, oh, if I went into AA and they told me to, stand with a bucket of water on my head, I would have done it. I wouldn't have done it. I didn't know if I was that willing. I came in with a lot of reservations, not totally sure, wanting proof, wanting evidence, and I think I was just open-minded enough to hear some people out. And so that's kind of where it started for me. I'll kind of back up and talk a little bit about my drinking because step one is the only step that really outright mentions drinking. So I think it's appropriate here. I'm from the DC area. I saw some people in the chat talking about DC and the snow. I hope everyone's staying safe in it. But yeah, I'm from around here, Montgomery County, and come from a loving home, loving parents. There's a lot of alcoholism in my family. And growing up, things were fine. I think if you look really deep into it, you could say like, yeah, I had feelings of not fitting in, things like that. But on the surface, I had friends, played sports, cared about doing well in school. One thing that I realize now is I probably cared way more than I should have about what everyone else thought of me. But I had a good childhood. I grew up mild uncomfortability, I'd say a fairly normal amount, if not a little bit more than normal. And I uh like Christine says, she knows my mother. My mom's a Caron alum. She had tried to get sober when I was young a couple times. And so I saw the negative side of alcoholism and nothing, that doesn't make you an alcoholic. You don't have to have family members that are alcoholics to be alcoholic. I know plenty of people that don't that are, but I just say that because I didn't want to be that. And that was my first goal. When I learned what drinking was and everything about it, my goal was to not be like that. And I wasn't good at accomplishing that goal. I found myself in Caron when I was 19. And yeah, so I had my resentments and everything like that, and just kind of went through life and finally found drinking when I believe I was 14 years old. And the first time I ever drank, a buddy of mine, we were going to an older siblings party, and they put a limit on all of our drinking. They were like, let's just have 2 drinks and see how it goes. And I was like, cool, that sounds great. I'm terrified of this thing, alcohol. It makes your life bad. So I'm gonna have 2 drinks and see how it goes. And that was the plan. And that's kind of the story of my drinking. Like the plan is not to be a wrecking ball and mess things up. The plan is not to overdo it and cause harm to people. Like my intentions were never that, but my actions did not reflect them once I put, drugs and alcohol in my body. And so, I had those 2 drinks. They went down quick. I got a feeling that I'd never had before, and I kept chasing it and I kept drinking. And I remember that night I was thrown up in the bushes. And the thought I had leaving that party, my friend was yelling at me. He's like, "What are you doing? We're gonna get in trouble." And the thought in my head was like, "Man, I could see why you'd want to feel like this every day." And a 14-year-old kid coming from an alcoholic family, seeing alcoholism up close and personal like that, that's a scary thought to have. First time drinking, broke the rule I set. Under it clicked in my head, it understood, and I kind of describe it. I heard it from another speaker once. They described it as it was like there was a rock in my shoe my whole life. I didn't know it was there. And the minute I took a couple drinks, that rock was gone and I felt free. And I didn't care what you thought about me. I felt like I was the man. I felt cool. I felt like I could fit in. I could talk to people. It just loosened up that part of me that was so afraid of what you thought of me, of the world, of everything else. And so I immediately knew that was not a good thought to have, something I'd have to try to control. And so I think I did my best to control it. Again, I wasn't good at it. Started out as weekend drinking, kept everything looking good on the outside, um, and kind of like, I don't know where I crossed that line into what becomes alcoholism. I know from the get-go, my relationship with alcohol, it did something for me that it didn't do for other people. Other people didn't have that rock in their shoe. Other people didn't have that missing puzzle piece that just clicked in their brain. The relationship I had with it was, it was like a spiritual experience, every time I could drink. And so I chased it. And the kind of the progression of my story was, fun, and it served the purpose, right? It took away that fear that I had. Like I had a lot of fun drinking alcohol very, early on. And it allowed me to be the person I thought I should be. And eventually, if you suffer from, alcoholism, it gets to a point where it stops working as much, and you're chasing a feeling that is fleeting and you're not able to get to that same point. And so I think I was chasing that first day of drinking my whole time. And yeah, started to have some consequences. Started to drink a lot heavier, added some more things in the mix, and I just wanted to feel like I did, when I was under the influence. And so my like high school career ended with I couldn't keep the facade up anymore. I was getting drug tested by the high school. I was seeing doctors and they were telling me that I had to stop drinking because of my liver. And I was really young. I was 17, 18, and my enzymes were really high. And I thought it was a fluke. That's kind of how my disease talks to me. They're showing me hard numbers of my blood work. And I'm telling them, nah, it may just be my diet. It's probably not that. It might be irritable bowel syndrome. I literally convinced hard science that they were wrong. I'll go to great lengths to protect the one thing that works. And I went to my first AA meeting at that time. I was a senior in high school. Someone who was connected with Karen actually took me to a meeting, and they were connected in some sort of way. And I remember I went to the West Side Club in DC. It was like the Wednesday noon meeting, and I could not have been less willing to be there. I was like, I don't have a problem. I don't need your help. And I said that in my share. I was really not like a nice, fun guy to be around. I was like, I'm here because I have to pass some drug tests that are outside of my control. Wrong place, wrong time. and I definitely don't need your guys' help to pass them. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm just here because I gotta be. And everyone like smiled at me and said, keep coming back. And I was like, I'm never coming back here. And I frequent the West Side Club fairly often nowadays, so I guess they were right, but I didn't like it at the time. And to sort of sum up my drinking, I, I get to this point, I go to college, no one should have let me go. People were worried about me going. And it just picked up steam. And eventually, like kind of what the bottom looked like for me was I had people that had only known me for 8 months calling my parents, telling me, we know this kid's a good kid, but he's not okay. We're worried about him. I had sort of lost the ability. It talks about it in the doctor's opinion. Like I couldn't differentiate the true from the false. I couldn't see the writing from the inside of the glass of like the state I was in and the situation I was in. I was very sick because I never stopped drinking after the doctors told me to. And so that landed me in a psych ward in Baltimore, just as crazy as everyone else in there, and scratching at the walls to get out. And from there, I had an intervention. And from that intervention, something happened. And this might have been a little bit of a step one experience. And the guy that was doing the intervention, I fought this dude for 3 hours. I fought him for 3 hours. I did not want to go. And finally, at the end, he's like, I give up. I can't help you. I'm gonna leave you here. And he said, I guess you just need some more pain, was all he said to me. And I kind of had this flashbulb moment where I looked at my life and I was like, okay, all I've been trying to do this whole time I've been drinking since I was 14 years old is just stop the pain. Like just stop it, And drinking did that for a while. And as I progressed, I was in a lot of pain, emotionally, physically, spiritually, like I was not right. And I was fighting that idea. And he said that to me, and I knew I had been trying to get the train back on the tracks going up. And all those efforts I tried, I was on this path down, and I knew there was nothing I could probably do to stop it on my own power. And it was a quick moment, and I just said, fine, I'll go. I'll give it a try. And so that landed me in Caron in Pennsylvania, with the attitude that I described previously to you. That was like a very fleeting moment. It was like 30 seconds of like, all right, I'll go. And then I'm in the car going, and I'm like, what? Why did I do this? I could have gotten out of that psych ward. Um, and so what I want to read really quick is just a little bit of the doctor's opinion on step one and kind of dive a little more into the step. So this is on it's before the page numbers start, but this kind of outlines what I believe is the problem and the solution. So this part's the problem. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it's injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented. Unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks, drinks which they see others take with impunity, after they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is little hope of his recovery. So that's kind of telling me if I relate to what you guys are saying, if I'm relating to this, that's the life that's in front of me, right? Unless I can experience a entire psychic change, I'm doomed to repeat this cycle of sprees. And then it goes into what I believe is a summary of the solution. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that they're required to follow a few simple rules. And those, I believe, are other steps and traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so, um, step one, powerlessness and unmanageability. So I was grappling with this when I was in Caron and I was thinking about it. And I think a lot of people struggle with the unmanageability part, right? They're kind of able to keep the career going, keep the life up, keep things looking good for a little while. My experience was I knew it was unmanageable. Like something was unmanageable. I didn't know if it was just the booze or the way I thought or the way I acted, but you know, like I said, like school, I had like a 1.7 GPA after being like a straight A student in high school. Um, my liver was failing at 19 years old. I was sick as a dog all the time. Like I couldn't even eat a square meal. I couldn't live a normal life and like take care of myself. Like that, I wasn't managing it well, right? So I was like, okay, yeah, it might be unmanageable. I'm not sure exactly what the cause is of it, if with all the denial I had. The powerlessness piece, that was where I kind of struggled with it. And I don't know if my first sponsor's on this call. It'll be funny if he does share because he saw me grapple with all these things as we sat in the Taco Bell in Yorktown Heights, New York, and tried to go through the steps. And it was the powerlessness that I was like, I don't know what that means. I never really tried to quit. I was like, if I really tried, I might have been able to. Like, I can't ever know if I'm an alcoholic because I never really tried. And just to like my understanding of powerlessness, right, is like it's that saying that I had with my first drink. I'm only gonna have two, and here's how it's gonna go. And the next thing you know, you're throwing up in the bushes. And I had this illusion that I had the power of control over this thing, when really the results always were I couldn't keep my word when it came to drinking. I crossed the lines in the sand. When I took one, I did not know how many I would take. But I was fighting this battle in my head where I'm like, I don't know. How do I know if I'm really powerless? How do I know? And he said something to me that always stuck with me. And he's like, if any normal person was facing the consequences you were facing, they would have at least tried to quit. You didn't even try. And for me, like that was a step one experience for me, because that kind of like cut through the BS that I was telling myself. And it's like, you're right, 18-year-old kid, liver failing out of school, parents are crying. They would have tried. I didn't, I was so selfish, I didn't even give it a thought to try to quit. And so, um, also with step one, it talks about in that reading, like the phenomenon of craving, all this stuff. I remember I read the doctor's opinion when I like first got out of Caron and first was getting sponsored, and it made no sense to me. I was like, I don't know if I wasn't ready to hear it. I read it today and I'm like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But I was like, an allergy, like I don't know if I'm allergic to this stuff. Like I just don't know. And what I've come to understand, and I heard this on a retreat where they talked a lot about step one, is like they described, the problem like this. They said, um, essentially, once we start drinking, we're powerless. We have very little to no control over the amount we take. So that's the allergy part of it, and I identify with that. I don't know if I did on day one, but today I look at my drinking objectively, and I can say I've had a lot of times where I said I'm just gonna have one or two, and next thing I'm face down in the pavement, and I have no idea how I got there. And so, I take a sip of alcohol and the phenomenon of craving kicks in, and I don't know when this spree is going to stop. But eventually, I either run out, I pass out, something stops me, I come up for air, and I'm like, wow, that was terrible. I don't want to do that again, right? I don't want to do that again. The sick, twisted part about alcoholism is it's a mental and spiritual thing as well. It's not just physical. And so, what ends up happening with me is the the thing about alcoholism is it tells me after a period of abstinence that somehow, some way, something will now be different, right? Because I've spent a little time away and I got my grades up and I have a girlfriend now or I have this keeping me, whatever the situation is, there can be actually no external thing that changes it, but I will still convince myself that this time will be different because of X, Y, and Z. And so again, I convince myself or I am convinced. And I think I'm choosing this. I think I have the power to choose. Really, I don't. It's inevitable if you suffer from alcoholism. And I drink again because I need that feeling. I just need to breathe again. I need to feel okay again. I got to get the rock out of my shoe. And so this happens, over and over again. And the other thing that can happen is if I'm dry and I'm away from alcohol for a period of time, I have a certain level of emotional, an emotional threshold. And once I reach a certain point, there's no other solution I have other than to drink. And so when I'm acting based on self-will and my defects of character, and I'm acting the way Logan wants to act, just trying to get his way, trying to control the narrative, trying to control all these things, it's like I'm a pressure cooker and I just get tighter and tighter like a spring, right? I get so tight to the point where my only options are either to end it all or to take a drink. And that's where alcoholism, what I didn't understand when I first came in is I was like, why are people with 30 years still here? Like they don't, the problem's gone. Like, why are they still here? And what I didn't know is that alcoholism can kill you whether you're drunk, sober, or not. It manifests in the mind. And I think that's a lot of people too. They come in to treatment and they don't fully understand step one and really what we're dealing with. And essentially what it says is like, if you relate to this stuff in the book, it's inevitable that it will happen again without some form of solution, which they call a psychic change. And and so I'm learning all this stuff when I'm new and I'm like, man, I might be doomed, like, and I didn't feel good in early sobriety. I was restless and irritable and discontent like well into my sobriety. I didn't know how to feel okay without a drink or a drug. I had to learn that. Um, and so I start hearing this stuff and I'm like, I might need to go find myself a psychic change. I don't know what that means. I don't know how to do it. And my sponsor told me, well, that's what the rest of the steps are for. Because right now you are not ingesting alcohol. The physical part of the problem it's not happening right now. You're not drinking, you're not going to experience the allergy. What we're fighting is that mental part, that spiritual malady that's within you that will eventually convince you that it's a good idea to drink again. And so we start on the rest of the 12 steps. And just very briefly, like that's um I was told this once and it stuck with me. It was in some speaker tape somewhere, but it said if I had a drinking problem, I'd stop drinking and there would be no problem. When you suffer from alcohol, you can tie me to a tree and I'd get sober, But when I suffer from alcoholism, there's to find that real recovery, I had to go through with the rest of the 12 steps. Or else, because of the condition I suffer from, which is alcoholism, I was doomed to repeat that cycle again. I would have got wound tight, 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 and I would have taken that drink again. And so, sort of what my life has been like for the past 5.5 years is like trying to live in the rest of those steps. I don't think about step one on a daily basis. I don't wake up in the morning and say, God, I don't have to, I really got to remember that I'm powerless and unmanageable. That part's kind of, it gets removed over time. And now it's about living sober because I know if I act selfishly, if I treat people poorly, if I act with an anger, right now I deal with some stuff at work and I care so much about what they think of me. And I have so much fear around the outcomes and everything like that. Like if I continue to live like that, I get wound tight enough to a point where I don't have a solution and I need to take a drink. And so um that's kind of like the my experience with step one. I know I've gone for about a little over 20 minutes and kind of what I'll say is uh I said it at the beginning, but like if you're new and like none of it makes sense, like I relate to you more than anyone probably in this room. Everything that I heard at Caron went in one ear and out the other. And what happened was I showed up in AA and I found people that were happy. And I wanted that bad. I just wanted to feel okay. If I could have kept drinking and just felt okay, I would have done it, but it wasn't working. And I found a guy who had a smile on his face, and he offered to take me through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I did not have hope or faith that it would work. I did them out of spite because I thought I was special and different and they wouldn't work. And there's no wrong intention for the right action, and I took the action with him and I tripped and fell through these steps and he held my hand and I wasn't an easy kid to sponsor and something happened. And something happened where I started to feel okay. And that's the miracle of AA for me, right? My sober condition, that restless, irritable, discontented part of me, something had helped that and saved that. And it was the 12 steps and it was with the help of a higher power, which the 12 steps got me in touch with. And so I don't need to go any longer. I kind of want to hear what you all have to say. I have little audio issues on my computer, so I might swap over to my phone just so I can hear everybody. But really appreciate being here. Thank you so much, Christine, and everyone all the work everyone does at Caron. I would not be here without you guys. It's not an easy job. Guys like me make it hard. But it's definitely much appreciated. So thanks everyone for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Logan. I find you amazing and inspiring and identified with almost everything you said. Uh, Pretty much everything you said. I don't know if there's anything I didn't identify with, including not getting the allergy thing. At Caron, they would like hand out tissues and be like, for your allergy. And I'm like, I don't have allergies. It's January. So I get it. Uh, I also heard in the rooms, I kind of, you made me think of it, is that relief comes in the meeting and recovery comes in the steps. And I'm the same way you are. I wake up an untreated alcoholic every morning and I need to get my treatment because that pressure cooker happens when I least expect it. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to stop the recording, first of all, and then I'm going to take you